Okay, bonjour tout le monde. My name is Ed Smith, and I am a teacher at Joel Barlow High School in Reading, Connecticut, and I'm pleased to present this last in our series of the 2016-2017 year, our AATF webinar. Today we're going to be talking about Pear Deck and how you can deploy this really useful student interactive platform. But before we get started, what I'd like you to do is go into your chat feature. So you're going to see that there's the bubble up at the top of your screen. I just sent a little message to everybody. So if you could just go ahead and send me one back, just to let me know that you can hear me, and also so you know that that's a way to send me a message. All right, great. I see some good messages coming through. Bonjour, bonjour à tous. I imagine everyone is excited for the end of the school year. If you've already finished, congratulations, enjoy it, you've earned it. And if you haven't yet, well, keep persisting. It is going to end shortly. We are in the midst of our exams at this time and getting ready for our graduation. All right, great. So as the messages are coming in, I'm just going to give you a rundown of our agenda for this evening. I'm going to give you a quick overview of what is Pear Deck, how can you use it, how can you create one, and then what do you do with it after the activity? Because there are quite a few options that you can do with Pear Deck to help inform your instruction. It's a handy tool to allow you to see whether your students are really understanding what it is you're teaching. It also gives you an opportunity to see if they're understanding some comprehension questions in a reading. So I'm going to show you all some examples today of how I use Pear Deck in my classroom, and also I'm going to show you how you can create and build your own Pear Decks and use those. So let's get started with the overview of Pear Deck. And so to do that, I'm going to go to their website, and it's just simply peardeck.com. And it's a website that works very well with Google. So if you have Google Classroom or all of your students have a Google account, this will work seamlessly. What it's going to do is it's going to ask all of your students to log into their Google accounts, and it will keep track of all of their answers. So you'll see here, you need to have either a Google Classroom account or you need to be a Google School in order to use it. So if we go down, I'm just going to give you a quick look at this. So you can take an already existing PowerPoint or Google slide presentation or even a PDF, and you can convert them into what's called a Pear Deck. Now, why would you do that? The Pear Deck allows you to embed questions into the presentation. So each slide could have a question on it. And what it will do is it will also ask every student to supply an answer. Now, you're probably familiar with Kahoot or Socrative or Formative. This is similar to some of those types of presentation software and also interactive platforms. But this one is a very simple one that you can use to bring your presentation up to the next level. So what will happen is you'll make your Pear Deck, and you're going to be projecting from your computer on your projector screen the presentation. And your students, as you can see here in the illustration, they'll be sitting at their desks with a device. And it can either be a computer, a tablet, or even their cell phone. So it's pretty flexible in regards to the technology that you have. Now, you'll ask a question, and it will go out to the students. And so it's a clicker style response system, but you're going to be able to hear from every student. And it's actually going to take you, it's going to give you more detail because the students will actually be required to type in an answer as opposed to a Kahoot where you have to click one answer out of a choice of 4. So you can do all kinds of styles of questions. You can do multiple choice, text, number, drawing, draggable pins on images, and more. One of the important things to understand about Pear Deck, though, is it's what we would call a freemium service. Freemium is a combined word meaning part of it's free, but part of it is also a premium service that you would pay for. And we'll go and walk you through which part is free and which part is premium. And so Pear Deck, if you can see here, you can also share those Pear Decks with other teachers. So if you're working in your department and you've made a really good Pear Deck, you can share that with someone else, and vice versa. So you can see here, as I scroll down, you'll get that formative feedback to tell you how are your students doing. So here you can see with a French example, which is great, we're being presented with La Neige, and you have our one student here who didn't get it right. So you can kind of circle back, maybe quick reteach something or readjust your instruction. One of the other features allows you to have the answers displayed anonymously. So no one's name is attached to an answer. So it's a way to review what the answers were given. And you can also take a quick approximation and see how many people are getting it right versus how many people are getting it wrong. So you can sort of slow down your lesson. One of the other premium features is that you could then also send a report home to parents to let them know how well they're doing. So again, this is a premium feature, and if you're interested in it, I would encourage you to talk to someone who is using Pear Deck currently and also has that premium feature. All right, so that's pretty much an overview of Pear Deck and how it works. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go create a Pear Deck. So I'm going to go ahead here and sign in with my Google account. Now, what will happen is when you want to do this with your students, you're just going to tell them to go to peardeck.com, and you're going to have them do the student sign-in version. I'm going to go in here to the teacher sign-in and let you know what that looks like. So here's my landing. I'm right here in the home page, and I can easily see all of the Pear Decks that I have already created. So I've made a few already this year for different levels, different classes. So for example, I have what we call our French 3. This is our freshman year. They've already had 2 years of French, all the way up to French 5, which is our pre-AP course. So here are the ones that I've created. And what you can do is we can actually create one from scratch. So I'm going to show you how to do that. You're going to come over here where it says create a new Pear Deck. And it's going to give you the option now to either start from scratch or to import. So here we go. If I want to just start from scratch, I'm just going to go ahead and click on Add Slide. So it's pretty much like a Google slide or a PowerPoint presentation where I'm going to make a slide, I'm going to have a title, and I can add images and all of these other pieces. So today I'm going to just give it a little title, AATF webinar. And now you'll see on this side, you get a student preview. So you're going to see what the student sees. Now what I can also do is add an image, and there's a couple ways that you can do that. So I can either upload something or I can do a Google image search. So I'm just going to do a quick image search here for a baguette, just something really simple. Here we go. I'm going to throw that in. And there we go. So you'll see that now my title has been moved up to the top here. and my image has sort of taken over and created, taken up most of the space. So what I want to do now is, maybe I want to ask a question. If I'm doing a food unit and I want the students to tell me, what is this? I'm actually going to come over here to where the slide is, and I'm going to click on it, and it's now going to give me a couple options. I can leave it as just a normal slide, which means it's not interactive. I'm not asking a question. I'm just giving information. Or I can embed a question. So I'm going to go down here, and I can create a multiple choice slide. So I'm going to do that. And so now you can see I've got a couple item choices. So I'm going to say, okay, this is une baguette. And so you'll get that one choice. I'll put in something else like un œuf. And then I'll put in something else like une pomme. There we go. So now what's going to happen is the student is going to see the image on the screen, and then they'll also get to see the options here. Something very important to note, the options at this point don't have the ability to be shuffled. So you want to make sure that if you're doing a series of multiple choice questions, that you manually shuffle up the options. I know a lot of times Kahoot will allow you to shuffle as well as some of the other websites, but Pear Deck doesn't have that ability just yet. Now, if I wanted to get rid of an option, I can do that by clicking here. And I can actually add it back to the bottom. So that's another way to shuffle up the options. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go and add another slide. And I'm going to do another one here, like we'll just put in any title, like Ville. And I'm going to now change the type of question I'm going to ask. Instead of doing a multiple choice, I'm going to do a free response. So now you'll see here, it's changed to free response. And on the bottom, I can either decide to have it be a paragraph or a short text. For this one, I'm going to do short text. So what's my question going to be? I'm going to try to find an image now. And I'm going to do the Eiffel Tower. And so the goal of the activity is then to get the students to tell me, well, what city is the Eiffel Tower located in? And so they're going to all hopefully type in Paris. And as the answers come in, I'll be able to monitor them, and I'll be able to see how many are getting them right, how many are getting them wrong. So the difference between a paragraph and a short text, if I change this, you're going to see now what it's going to look like. A paragraph is just going to provide them with more space within which to compose their answer. So this is great for comprehension questions. If you're doing a short reading and then you're walking them through a presentation and you want to have them answer certain questions, they would use then this paragraph text box as opposed to the short text, which is limited to so many characters. And so that's how you would go ahead and build a Pear Deck from scratch. You could also add text blocks, so then I could just put in text here. And to get rid of it, if I wanted to change it, I would just delete it. You can add a list, or you can add a YouTube video. So you can go ahead, get the URL, copy it, paste it, and then you would be able to watch the video up on the full screen, and your students would actually be able to watch it in their seats as well on their device. So that's how you would create a Pear Deck from scratch. You would continue to add the slides and going through and just building up your presentation. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you an example of how you can actually import. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to delete out all of the slides that I've created, and that's going to take me back to my original screen. So now I do have the option of importing, and when you get your Pear Deck account, you're going to notice that you're going to get 5 free uploads to Pear Deck. Once you use up the 5 free, you then have to move to the premium services. So I got a question here about Pear Deck. Does it allow you to easily type accents? Yes. So you would use the same methods that you would use in a Google Doc. I'm on a Mac, so I often use the Option E, the Option key, to produce those. If you were on a PC, you could use the codes or whatever system you have if you're using an international keyboard. So what you would also do is you would then go here to import PowerPoint, Google presentation, PDF. And so it will open up your Google Drive, and you will be able to select from your Google Drive what presentations you have. It will then import it, and essentially what it will do, it's going to import it as images. So imagine each slide of your presentation being turned into a JPEG file or an image file and then being placed into the Pear Deck. So something to know, before you import, make sure that your presentation is perfect, because you won't be able to really go back in to the text once it's in Pear Deck and modify it, because it's going to be like a JPEG file. Another question I got here is, can you export Pear Deck as a PowerPoint? And I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't believe you can. I have to just research that. So I'll have to look that up for you, Mikev. So just to reiterate, you want to make sure that your presentation that you're uploading is perfect and that everything is ready to go. So you would do that, and you would get something that's going to look a little bit like this. I'm going to go back to my home screen here, and I'll show you an example of a PowerPoint that I uploaded, and it's this one right here. So let's take a look at that. And what I did is I had made this PowerPoint presentation on PowerPoint and essentially uploaded it right into Pear Deck. So you can see here, it treated it as a image file. So I can't necessarily go in and change the text here. So you see the word Canadien. I can't go in and edit that. So again, I want to make sure that my presentation is perfect. Now, if I slide down, you'll see I have here my instructions for the students. I give them a bit of a context, a task, what they're going to do, and what they're going to have to use within the presentation. So just a quick run through. Well, we're working on les phrases avec si, and they're having to express what would have happened if some other condition had taken place. So again, we're using the plus que parfait with the conditionnel passé. You'll notice here on this particular slide, I embedded a yes/no question. And the reason I did that is because I'm going to orally ask them, do you understand? Do you have questions? And as they're answering oui or no, I can determine, okay, maybe I need to step back and I need to re-explain these instructions. So here's what I did with this particular example. In my traditional PowerPoint, I have a question or I have a phrase with some blanks. Now in the past, what I would do was I would ask them to get an individual whiteboard, and they would use a dry erase marker and they would write the answers in. And usually they work in groups of 2 or 3, and then I'm busy trying to tell everyone, yes, no, okay, fix that, fix this. And so here what the advantage is, the students are now going to be working individually or in pairs, but on their device. And they're going to be putting their answer in here. So you can arrange it so that, for example, maybe I want to have, think I can have 2 boxes. You would have them type out the correct conjugation of the verb that's here. And you have a couple of options moving forward. I can either change my projector view and show the students what their answers are, so they could look through and compare it. Or I can simply say, all right, time's up, let's see how you did, and I move to the next slide, which gives them the answer. So this serves 2 purposes. The first is it's going to confirm for the students whether they got the answer right or wrong. And because I've moved on, they no longer can edit their answer. So I get a true impression of how well they did on this particular task. So it serves that sort of dual purpose of confirming the right answer, but then shutting down the submission so that I can go back later and see. So this is an example of a PowerPoint that I uploaded to Pear Deck. You could also, if you wanted to, you could add a title to each of the slides. Now, if I do that, I'm just going to say this is slide 2. You'll notice that over here, the image has gotten a little bit smaller to make room for that title. So I didn't necessarily put in a title for each of the slides because I wanted my slide to be the biggest image on the page. And plus, since I had already done all that work in the PowerPoint, wasn't necessary. So you can see that this activity allows the students to work on the different forms of both the plus que parfait and the conditionnel du passé with different subjects, different verbs, and giving them that practice that they would get with a traditional whiteboard, but then also providing me with feedback. So let's take a look now. Once you've concluded it, concluded the presentation, you're going to be able to go back and look at all of the results. All right, so let's see. I've got another question here. Does this work like a Google form questionnaire? Yes. All of the answers will then be exported out to a Google Sheet. And so you'll be able to sort them by student, by response, and by question. So if I go back here. Let me go back to home. I'm going to now access the same Pear Deck, but I'm actually going to access it from a different way. So let's take a look. Where I was before, that's where I was editing. So you'll see here that I've already presented this in 2 separate sessions. So meaning I presented it to my period 3 class on Wednesday, May 10th, and I did a practice session with myself on Tuesday, May 9th. So every time you open a session, it's going to save those results, and you can go back to the results from that session, which is a huge advantage. If I go over here to this icon, you're going to see, okay, this is where you get into the premium level of the software. And the premium basically allows you to have unlimited imports. You can also start presenting directly from a PowerPoint or Google presentation as many times as you like. You can do these drawing and draggable slide creations, have a live session dashboard or a session review. So I'm not going to upgrade just yet. I'm pretty happy with the free version as it is. Now, if I go over here, you're going to see that I could reopen this session. And this is really handy if, say, for example, you get to the end of the period and you haven't necessarily gotten to the end of the presentation. It's not a problem. You can close it, and then you can come back to it. And so when that happens, you can pick up right where you left off, and all of the answers from the second session will still get recorded and go along with the first session. So that's a really nifty element to have to this. For example, if I reopen the session, you'll see here that you have a couple options. You could turn on student paste. So say, for example, I've created a Pear Deck or a PowerPoint, and I just want to let the students work at it individually at their own pace instead of me leading them through it. I can turn that on and basically set them loose. So this is a nice way to differentiate for your students. Those students that might take a little bit longer to answer the questions won't feel pressured to have to get it done in a certain amount of time. And those students that know it, have it down, can just go ahead and they don't necessarily have to wait. So you can turn that on or off whenever you want. And so you'll notice that the session is on, and that's indicated by this green bubble over here by the name. So when that says that it's on, I can go ahead and start presenting. So this says I've already got one in progress. Yeah, I know that. So what I'm going to do is end this one. And I'm going to start a new session anyway. So let's take a look. It's going to upload all of those. And so this is what's going to be projected on your screen and what the students are going to see. So they like to do this little game where each letter represents a word. So here it's Zarek, avocados yield purple drums. The kids find that kind of funny. And as the students join, you're going to see a number come up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually join. I have another computer here that's going to allow me to do that. And it's just going to take a quick second. And as the students are getting into it, what you can do is you can ask them a question of, how are you feeling today? And they can do the little happy face emoji or the, fine emoji or the sad emoji. All right. So you'll see here I'm presenting. And what I also can do is, since I can't seem to get into it from my end, I'm just going to go through it here. You can go ahead and then navigate through the presentation by using this slide navigator. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward one. And so now you'll see that I'm presenting that first slide. This is my introduction slide where I present what we're going to do. And also at the bottom of the screen, the code is still there. So the students, any latecomers can still join in. Somebody comes in late, it's not a problem. Now you'll notice that as I move my mouse around, the view changes a little bit. So if I just leave my mouse up at the top, that bar now disappears, but the code is still available in the corner. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to motor through the presentation, go through the context, the task, all those things. And then the students are going to start working. And so they're going to see it on their screen with that space for them to answer. Now let's take a look at some of the other options you have here. Say, for example, I'm in a situation where I started this presentation yesterday, and I'm picking it up halfway through. So instead of having to click through every single slide, I can use this icon here, and I can navigate to the slide that I want. So I just simply scroll through. All right, and this is where we were last time. So here we are. I'm going to click on that, and there it is. And so now it brings everybody to that one slide. Oh, good. I see Michael just joined possibly as a student. All right. So when you join, excellent. Now he's going to go ahead and respond. Perfect. So now that he's joined in as a student, I can take a look and see what his answers are. So now, how do I do that? I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go to that little projector icon, and I'm going to click on that. And so now I am projecting what he is putting on what he's putting on his computer. And a lot of times what you'll notice is you'll see the ellipses or the 3 dots, and that means the student is still working. And so as I get more responses, I can scroll down, scroll back up. I can also change the way they're listed. Here I have short answers, so I'm actually going to choose the grid. And so with the grid, that allows me to sort of put them all up together, just like that. Perfect. Aurait marqué. Perfect. And so now if I want to go back to my original, I'm going to scroll back down to the bottom, and I'm going to change my view. I'm going to go to hide, and now I'm back to my regular view. Now, I can also lock the slide, and essentially that means I just can't move anywhere. So say you're in the middle of talking about this question, and now all of a sudden you have a student, you have this inclination that the students don't know what dégager might mean. So I can, in the middle of the presentation, I can ask a question. So, for example, what I can do here is I can do a new question type with current content. So I could use that and ask about that word dégager. I could re-ask the same question, or I could do a new interactive question. So let's do the new interactive question. And so that's basically going to be a brand new slide. And right here, I'm going to say, all right, I want a short text answer. And I'm just going to orally ask the question. Hey, everybody, what do you think dégager means? And then they're just going to go ahead and type in what they think it is. All right, so I got another question here. Do you need 2 computers to see answers at the same time that you are presenting? So no, you don't need 2 computers. Basically, you're going to be changing the view. You're going to be going from the slide view to the student response view. And that's how you can toggle back and forth. And so you use this projector icon here to do that. So here we go. Score, perfect. So that's the answer that Michael was able to give us. All right. So there's that one. And now the last one here, I can, let's see, I can make it full screen on my screen here. And then I can also, from this point, turn it student paced. Maybe I just want to let them go. Or I can go ahead now and end the session. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to end the session. Great job, everybody. And when I do end the session, I'm going to give it a name. Now, this is important, especially if you want to come back and look at the results later. So we're just going to give it the AATF webinar, and we'll say that this was period 9 today. And so I'm going to hit save and end session. And so now it's been saved. The Pear Deck has closed, and now for the students, it's also closed. So if I take a look, I go back to my Pear Deck, you'll see, here it is. Here's that session that we just had. And I can go ahead and I can either reopen it, rename it, or I can export it to a spreadsheet. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. So I'm actually going to choose the one that I did with my class last month. So I'm going to export this now to a spreadsheet so you can see what it looks like when a full class answers. So it's going to create a whole new document, and it's going to be a Google Sheet. And so here it is. And you'll notice that we have here the Pear, it says Pear Deck, but it's basically the time and date stamp, the name of the student, their name, and then their answers. And so you'll see for each one, so here we have the slide name, and then their answers. So you'll see here that some of the students used a different way of answering. So some of them just said, okay, answer 1 or answer 2. So you could think about how you want them to respond when they put in their answers. So again, you could go ahead and sort this any way you want. Say you want to take a look at a particular question. So for example, here, slide 7, this is where we were using a verb like se mettre and se battre, and that can be tricky for students because they've got to use être. So I want to really focus in on that. And so I can see, all right, kind of half and half here. So, you know, maybe I want to go back and revisit that on the next day. Some of the other questions, there were a couple other questions here. This was a spontaneous question that I asked in the middle of the class. I said, well, what do you think of this activity? Give me your opinions. And so here they just were able to quick type in a response. So once you have your Google Sheet, you can then go ahead and move it to wherever you want in your Drive and use that as reference. All right, so I got another question here. Does the extra slide created get saved in your Pear Deck? So the extra slide, yes, it does get saved at the end. So you might want to go back in and just double check that you want it or not want it. So let's take a look. We'll actually verify if that's true or not. Okay, so here it didn't save. So that last one where I asked a spontaneous question, that didn't get saved. So that's something new to me as well. All right, another question here is, can you assign this in a Google Classroom assignment with a time limit for each question? So here it would be, the answer would be no. This is something that I know another web service offers, but this is really meant to be done in the classroom with the teacher. So let's see. I'm just going to go and check one thing for Mikel here. Yeah, so if I go into today's session, export to spreadsheet, let's see what we get when we export that out. All right, yeah, so those questions, those quick at the end of the presentation questions that I asked, those get saved in the response sheet, but they don't necessarily get saved in the actual Pear Deck itself. All right, so that's pretty much a rundown of Pear Deck and how you could put some together. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to give you a couple other examples of Pear Decks that I've created and different ways that you could use it. For example, I have here where we just finished working on Le Petit Prince. I'm sure everybody is very familiar with it, and you probably used it quite a bit. So this is a Pear Deck that I've created where I wanted students to be able to work with some comprehension questions based on the chapter. So we do one chapter a day. So we read through the chapter, and this is one that I created directly in Pear Deck. So I gave the Pear Deck a title, and then I gave a little image. And then what I did was I just started asking my questions. So, for example, numéro 1, pourquoi le narrateur a-t-il posé son avion dans le désert du Sahara? And now the students will go ahead and just put in their longer answers. So this is, again, one that you would want to use. I used a short text here. You could use a paragraph. for that as well, just to make it easier for the students. So these are just a series of comprehension questions that I put in with some images to help the students better understand that chapter. So one of the nice things about this is that it again allows every student an opportunity to present an answer, to give a response. And one of the things that I like to do is then go back, change that projector view so that I can see the student answers, and then pull out a really nice answer, a good model answer. So that's a nice feature that allows you to do that. And so you can show your students what you're really looking for. So there's an example of a comprehension one. I've shown you already my grammar Pear Deck that I've made. And the last one that I have here is for my really advanced tech students. And this is where you would really need 2 computers. So this is actually a Jeopardy that I made for my level 3 students. And it originally started as a PowerPoint presentation. And I uploaded all of the questions from that PowerPoint into the Pear Deck. Now, my PowerPoint has a lot of animations that you're not going to be able to use in the Pear Deck. They just don't have them yet. And so what I did was I said, well, I want, instead of using a traditional whiteboard and whiteboard marker, I want to record my students' answers to the Jeopardy questions. So I used 2 computers. On one computer, I projected the PowerPoint version of the Jeopardy, which had all of the bells and whistles and animation. And then on the other computer, I presented this Pear Deck, and I ran the Pear Deck with the students. So the Pear Deck basically matches up with the PowerPoint and then allows the students to have a more interactive experience with the Jeopardy. I like to play Jeopardy where every student answers every question. Tends to make it more interesting for the students. So here's an example of a 100-point question. This was all about technology. And so the question here is, pour composer des emails, on tape sur cet appareil. Now, I don't have the answer here in the Pear Deck, but I do have the answer in my original animated PowerPoint. So the students are over here, they're busy typing it in, and then once I say, okay, time is up, then I go ahead and I show the answer and we move on. So this is one of those advanced type of activities that you can use with Pear Deck. And if you're considering doing something along those lines, what you're going to want to do is use the navigation. So what I did, I'm going to go ahead and present this. I basically wrote out what all of the questions were, the question slides, and their corresponding number, so that I would come here to the slide navigator and say if someone chose a particular category for a particular amount, let's say they chose this category, okay, and they chose 200, I can see that this is slide number 14. And so I had created a handwritten key that told me, okay, this category for this amount is slide number 14. So I would navigate to that, and then I would present that slide to the class. And so now the students would get this on their computer screen. They would get the answer box, and they would go ahead and type it in. And if I wanted to block them from being able to change their answer, I would just simply go back to the original Jeopardy screen, and then I would show them the answer. So it's a little bit of an advanced way of using Pear Deck. So it's really for my brave souls out there who are willing to give it a try. But I think it helps to add that next level of engagement and giving you also that feedback that you want from your students. So I'm going to go back to the, I'm going to end my session here. All right, I don't need to save it. All right, and I'm just going to go home now. All right. So now we're just going to take a quick look at some of the other functions that are here. So we have a list of all of the sessions. So I don't need to necessarily go into a particular Pear Deck to access it. So these are all the sessions that I've run so far. I can then also go into my account. So you can see here I'm currently on the free plan. I may consider upgrading to the premium, but we'll see. And then I can also do some of these add-ons. So for example, if you're a GAF school, a Google Apps for Education school, you can activate the Google Classroom so that you can send out notifications, you can send out the code and invite students to participate that way. This is the emoji, the happy emoji that I was talking about. You can check for mood and feedback. So for example, you can invite at the beginning, you can invite the students to say, you know, how are you feeling today? And so they have to choose the emoji that represents their mood. And then at the end of the presentation, they could give feedback and you can specify what kind of feedback on the content, on the way the lesson went, etc. And then the last one here, and of course, this is a premium, is the takeaway. So that's when I was mentioning you could have a report that gets sent to the student and the parent as well. And this report would basically show the student what they answered versus what the correct answer was. So it is a nice metacognitive piece so the students could really reflect on where they're making their mistakes and possibly think about how they're going to improve going forward. So that's about it. That concludes pretty much the presentation piece of it. I'll open it up to the participants now for any types of questions that you might have, and I'll try my best to answer those. So in my experience using the Pear Deck, the student feedback has been very positive, especially if you can make it a little fun, a little interactive with some interesting questions, and also pairing them up. A lot of times, if you do it individually, they get a little bit overwhelmed or a little nervous about it. So I'll say, okay, pick a partner, decide who's going to log in, and then you're going to work together on that. So that also helps bring down sort of their anxiety over answering some of the tougher questions that could be presented with them throughout the Pear Deck. I've also found that making the Pear Decks really don't take too much time, especially if you know, if you've already got something that's already built and set up. It's just a matter of putting it in. And it really helps to make it a much more interesting class. One of the other things I am just going to quick go to is just show you some of the other question options. There is a true-false option that we didn't talk about. And let's see, we're just going to add a quick slide here. And so let's see. Here's you can do the multiple choice slide, which you can turn into a true-false. Now the draggable slide, that again is a premium option, but if you find it useful, you might want to go ahead and pay for that. The freehand, you can have students draw their answers. It's really good for tablets, or they can do it even with the mouse. Another type of slide that you can do is also a website slide, where you can go ahead and put a web address in, and then it will open up that website on the student's device for them. And so once again, keep in mind the Pear Deck works on every device, so from a full computer all the way down to a cell phone. All right, let's see. So 2 questions. Let's see here. All right. Could you import a Jeopardy PowerPoint/Google slideshow that already has the answers? That way you wouldn't need the second computer. You can. So my recommendation for that would be to have 2 separate slides. In my Jeopardy, I have animation where the answer appears. The problem is if you try to import that into Pear Deck, you're going to get an image that has the answer on it right away. So what you'd want to do is have 2 different slides in the PowerPoint, one without the answer, and then the next one with it, so that when you then upload it in, you would just then navigate to the next slide to then have the answer. All right, another question. Is it possible to draw freehand on a laptop? Yes, they can use the mouse, so that way you can have them draw little pictures. It's not as easy as with a tablet, but it still works. All right, another question. If a website is your slide, can the students then explore the website individually looking for specific information? Yes. So then it's almost as if you've just given them a link to the website and they can explore it that way. All right, let's see. Can you see someone else's Pear Decks? So you can share your Pear Decks with other people. So you would have to go in and find the other person's username, and then you'd be able to share those. All right, let's see. Does having them work together defeat the purpose of having every student answer? Depends on what you want the activity to do. If you want every student to answer, then you have every student answer. But if you want an activity where they're working together, maybe because you know you want to pair a strong and a weak student together, it's up to you. So it's what you want to get out of the activity. Okay, how do you do the points in Jeopardy if everyone must answer? So I don't use the PowerPoint or the Pear Deck to keep track of the points. I give them a sheet. And so what I do is I tell them, okay, the first column, you write down how many points you're playing for. In the next column over, if you got it right, it's a plus. If you got it wrong, it's a minus. And then they, in the third column, keep a running tally of their own score. For me, the score is not as important as the students answering the questions and just having practice with the material. And then at the end, we just sort of have a fun, let's see who got the higher score. How have you used the website app? So I'm not exactly sure if I understand the question. I don't know if there is an app version for Pear Deck, but if you're talking about the website, creating a slide with the website, it does work for just sending out a general website for the kids to look for information. So do I typically grade the students' answers on Pear Deck? So I don't consider this a summative. This is really more of a formative experience. I could grade them, but one of the things you have to consider is if you are in a classroom full of laptops, a student who is sitting behind another student could very easily look over and copy someone else's answer. So I wouldn't necessarily give them a grade. If we were in a lab type setting where it was harder for the students to see each other's screen, then yes. I would grade their answers in that respect. And I have done that at one time, but most of the time I like to use it just for this sort of formative experience. All right, well, if there aren't any other questions, or if there are, please send them through. This is pretty much everything about Pear Deck. I'm sort of still learning it as I go, but feel free to try it out with fellow teachers, get them together. It's really a neat little add-on that I think many people don't know about. So I'm here to sort of spread the word. So I want to thank you very much for joining me this evening, and I hope to see you next year when we reboot our AATF presentations. And if you have any suggestions for something you'd like to learn more about, send them my way. I'll definitely do my research and do what I can. One last question we have here came in is, with the website URL, you could do multiple choice free response questions like with the other slides. So that, no, unfortunately you can't. It's just a website. So what I would do is on one slide, present the website, and then in the next, you would present your question. So it's a good way to give students some think time, some research time. Okay. Yes, so the presentation is being recorded and you will be able to view it again. I'm going to send the link out to everyone, and that will probably be coming out this weekend once I get the video mixed. All right. Well, thank you very much, and I hope you all enjoy the summer. Bonnes vacances, profitez-en bien, et à la prochaine tous.